Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders, where we take a deep dive with experts from their respective fields and learn about what's going on in the macroeconomic environment as it pertains to them and what do they foresee in the near future. Today, we've got Jared Robin, co-founder of RevGenius. Thank you for joining us today, Jared. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what RevGenius is, if for those that don't know.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. So I'm Jared Robin. I'm co-founder of RevGenius. About myself, I'm now a Brooklynite in New York. I came from the East Village prior. Met a girl, and event one thing led to another. Now I'm here. It's great. A little more laid back. Fitness, community, all of that. RevGenius is a place for collaboration. We are where 45,000 GTM leaders, sales, marketing, rev ops, and customer success go to learn from one another and level up in their careers. We started RevGenius because of a challenge we saw in the space. Um, there wasn't a space for everyone. So enter RevGenius.
And how long ago was that?
April 22nd, 2020 is probably right around the time.
Right.
Um, Probably like May, so like just about 4 years
Wow.
ago.
Okay. Still fairly short amount of time given the growth of the member and the community in size, right?
Yeah, we got most of the growth in the beginning. We slowed down. We're probably at about like 1,000 members a month now.
Okay.
At our peak, we are at like 2 or 3,000 for a few months, but
Wow.
it's exciting. Yeah, I mean, we have 45,000 people in a Slack group, so we're not trying to necessarily double that in the Slack group because there's a law of diminishing return there, but we are trying to bring more people into the ecosystem for sure.
Very cool. Awesome. So I want to kind of like just dive in as we kind of just pre-mentioned, but um origination story, like for
Yeah.
you specifically, I know that you spent a bit of time, East Village, creative, fashion world, before you got into this.
Hmm.
But you also did have a sales background. Your dad came from sales. Seemed like he was a big influence in terms of like how you ended up in sales in the first place.
Yeah.
And also very big support system for how you guys ultimately, I feel like, started RevGenius in the very beginning, early days. Um, but talk to us a little bit about, what that previous chapter of your career might have looked like. Maybe some of the takeaways, because I do feel like whether it's creative or entrepreneurial in the business sense, it is all very entrepreneurial. There are quite a lot of soft skills that you take away from the creative world that translate over to entrepreneurship. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a book called The War of Art. It's a phenomenal book. I need to reread it. Entrepreneurship's like the second most creative thing you could do, according to Stephen Pressfield, I think is the name of the author. Phenomenal. But so I wasn't just in the creative space. I ran a fashion magazine as a side project. I had been part of communities like Soho House, like creative communities. I've been part of like Revenue Collective, Pavilion 1.0, business communities, and a few things in between. I had been in the fashion technology space as well. The side project was the magazine, and I actually saw a gap first in creating a creative community. I'm like, I want to build Soho House for actual people that work in the space versus people just like socialites that want to party. I'm like, and my partner is a creative director of a major publication. And I'm like, would you pay like $100 a month to be a part of a community of creative directors? And she looked at me like I had two faces, two heads, and I'm like, huh. I don't want to ask 20 more people if the person I'm about to live with is looking at me like this. Whether there's a gap or not, it just didn't feel right if I couldn't convince the person I lived with who's biased towards me to do that. So I'm like, okay, hmm. And then I looked in the SaaS space, which, by the way, my day jobs were in technology for the last, at this point, 7 years before ish. And I was in sales for another 7 years before that. In technology, I was tended to be the first seller, building out the team, the head of sales type. I don't want to say VP of sales because if you're a team of one, how are you the VP of anything? You could say head of though. Like I think that's fine. Especially if your intentions are to hire others. And I'm like, holy shit. in this SaaS space, there's a gap,
Yeah.
and somebody with a creative mind, because I don't think the SaaS space is that creative per
Yeah.
se.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a creative persona in there. I'm
Yeah.
looking at like white man, white man, white man, as like the leaders in the space, and like the communities that I was in, the few communities in the space I was in looked a little different than the Soho House community. And I'm like, this is a problem. I'm a white man, but like, this is a problem. This is a gap. And I'd bet the communities that are only allowing senior leaders in and are charging, I would bet they're unintentionally like prejudiced towards people that don't look like them because they can't become a senior leader, or they can't, or maybe they don't have the funds to pay, or something. And I'm like, why don't I just like get a community for everybody and have it be $0? And sure, there is a barrier. It's digital first, so you do need some sort of technology, but like pretty much lowering the barriers as much as feasible to get in. And I'm like, now that I'm thinking back, I'm like, not the best business, but but fill the gap and figure it out later,
Sure.
right? Like so not the best business on paper. The best business on paper is, hey, I have a community, pay
Yeah.
me $2,000 a year. Yes, no, no. What do you need instead? Let's figure it out, right? Yes, how can we do this better? This is a little different. But that was big, and like let's create a space for everyone. And this foreshadows the next questions that you have, like where I see this space going. But yeah, you need to have everybody in the room,
Mhm.
um, because you have to.
Yeah.
Like it's table stakes. We're in a real world. We can't have part of the people in.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Um,
that's
yeah,
where my head was at.
that's great. I think like you guys were on trend before it's become, I think, much more not even just popular, but like you just mentioned, table stakes of, companies having to build community as part of a go-to-market.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's kind of like a icky co-branding of those two words, perhaps, but like I do think it's important in terms of creating more value, creating community, giving back to that community as a part of, if you're thinking about trying to sell anything at any point in time, that's become even more critical nowadays, especially because of people's lack of attention or bombardment for their intention, through all
Yeah.
these other channels that have existed and worked well for the past, almost decade, but not so much
I
anymore.
I want to build on your use of icky. I used to feel exactly like that. I'm starting to warm up to not being icky, like about go to marketing community. And here's my logic why. If you're building a community the right way,
Yeah.
you're building it for the people.
Yeah.
Okay. You're building it for the fucking people. So if you, who's building something for the people, have a business model in mind as well, it's not out of line to expect the people to support you too.
Mm,
So if you're truly supporting them, and I'm not saying you're doing something to like throw out a fishing line to reel them in,
yeah.
if you're doing something truly to support them, they'll fuck with you too.
Yeah. True.
Think about that,
Very true.
right?
Very true. Yeah.
Right? Like yeah, of course. Like White Castle's doing this and this. Like, fuck, I fuck with White Castle. There's a business model there.
Yeah.
They do community stuff. So, I want to put that out there. Like
Yeah.
that's very important. It's not icky. And it's only icky if you're doing something directly to drive demand versus to help somebody else. And there's a gray area in between and a finesse, but like I just want to throw that out there, because if you start thinking of it like that, um, oh boy, you're gonna drive value.
Yeah. Now, okay. I mean, I buy into that. I get that idea. I
Yeah.
think now, contextually speaking, when I think of all the go-to-market leaders I've encountered in the past 5, 7 years, they don't necessarily think of provide value first. It's maybe not intuitive in that sales persona mindset.
Yep.
So, I guess I don't know if that's been your experience or not, but
100%.
so how do you, I guess, like, how do you enlighten that community specifically, whether it's through RevGenius directly or through your personal encounters with these different types of leaders, to spin that narrative where it is about, look, you can win later if you do even, or win now, but this is the basis of how you have to think about this.
Okay, so this starts going into like this new category of collaborative growth, which I believe that community is going towards.
Yeah.
If you look at the best communities, and best defined as like biggest companies that come from it, with community as like one of the primary like driver to getting there, um their product is involved in the community, but it's done in like such an organic growth loop kind of way that it's super beneficial. Notion, okay, you could get on Notion for free. Notion communities are wild, and they're allowing their users to make money off their product, right? Notion agencies, Notion templates, all of this. And these loops are big. Um, a younger company today, Clay, is
Mhm.
crushing it, crushing it. Like, like it's almost a cult. And there's people like, and why? It's not because of it's because of what the product empowers you to do, not trying to sell the product. um it helps you with outbound. It's like super cool, like you build lists like never before, you get hacky with it. They give you tons of ways to use it for free, discounts, make money off them, all of this. Figma, like what, like it goes on, and I know a lot of those have a PLG component, and I want to be like, um sure, like sure with that putting there, but like let's go to like Salesforce and HubSpot too.
Mhm.
Um, HubSpot has a free entry. Well, okay, so sales led, but they're giving their community, their ecosystem, ways to make money. Who are the biggest evangelists in HubSpot sales? They're the agencies, bro. Like straight up. And they're getting like all of this value. So of course they're co-promoting. So it's finding the secret sauce where it's a true collaboration, where they don't just get like, oh, I'm getting value, I saved 10% of time using your product. Like that's great. Like maybe you'll make a sale from that. Where you're gonna really get the loop is like, I'm getting value. I made 400K last year from being a HubSpot agency
Mm.
as that line item.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna scream a few times on social, and oh my gosh, we have a growth loop. Um, talking to Hockey Stack, okay, another early stage company, unpacking. They have all this data, and they're creating these amazing reports for people.
Mm.
Nowhere, and they're not product led, right? So you don't even have to get in Hockey Stack. Geez, like I'm I've been waiting to implement myself. I don't have the time. Like it's not like a quick implementation because there's so much, but it speaks to giving the community value,
Mhm.
and then the community giving it back. So yes, people are myopic, but when they start seeing, especially in SaaS,
Sure.
sorry everybody, but when you start seeing like growth loops coming, and if you're smart with that, now if you don't understand growth loops, you're not a growth person, yeah, keep being myopic. But like Chris, what growth loop doesn't have significant value for the person that's looping it back? Because they got to do something.
Yeah.
That's the whole nature of growth. So
Yeah.
let's take a step back, put community here, put everything. Do you want to do growth or not? Do you want to
Mm.
do something that keeps going around in circles and have a chance for virality? Or do you want to just be one sided? Let's just do cold outbound until everybody's fucking blue in the face. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying it's not the end all be all. You can't have a loop and get 1 point whatever the viral
Yeah.
coefficient is unless you're giving value to somebody in that loop so that
Yeah.
they could do something. You don't control the whole loop. Hopefully that's a little more of an objective answer. Like growth
Yeah.
involves giving value.
1000%. 1000%. Um,
when you connect with 7 people on Facebook or whatever, when you have that aha moment, the activation part where the head of Facebook product that developed the whole growth thing created the loop,
Yeah.
was because they had that. And ever since, it's required that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you did a great job in terms of like, I think extrapolating the thought process, right? And I think now it's just then
Yeah.
the other part of it too is like, I think figuring out what that value is that you need to create or give
Yeah.
back, and how do you figure that out? Um, maybe in like if you can speak to even first-handed or as an observer of other
Yeah.
companies that have done it well, before they actually get to that viral loop of that growth loop, um, how they go about figuring it, trying to figure it out for some of those earlier
So
companies like out there now.
so our first loop was people adding RevGenius to their profile. Why do
Mm,
they want to do that? LinkedIn, like people are just promoting content and they realize when you announce a new job, you get more eyeballs. Cool. So that's the first thing. And then like you announce a new job, you get more eyeballs from everyone else like already in that job. So like more Rev Genius people would come in. So that would be like their most potent post. And people would send me pictures of their profile views hockey sticking after they announced RevGenius. That costs $0. If it costs
right.
$0 to hockey stick impressions on you, that's kind of cool. Like that's a shit ton of value. Then over time, I started getting even better messages than that because that's like, frankly, that's enough value for $0. Like just posted and people are. We have 5,000 people. Then I started getting like somebody from India is like my agency got fired that I was working for, and I got hired directly because I had Rev Genius on my profile.
Mm,
Like, oof, wow, gave somebody a livelihood for $0. Now we're at the next level.
mm,
So like that's what we saw building Rev Genius, and yeah, and people supporting one another. Like at the way beginning, I don't want to say um like we were a LinkedIn DM group, and when like and we were just like best friends, and we grew to like 25 people, and 90% of the time we would talk about whatever, like connecting, and then 10% we'd be like, "Oh, check out our post." And it would amplify like quite a bit. So of course they wanted to add it. And then it became cool to refer people because they're like, "Oh yeah, one of the first founding members of RevGenius." Now nobody gives a shit.
yeah,
Well, they care significantly less. But like you get the idea. And that's something as well. Like the loop that worked along and the whole market stole those loops. And I take that as stole borrowed. They're gonna do that. They're gonna take the tactics that they see working.
yeah,
And it's a sign of respect. It's a sign of whatever. And that forces you to have to think 2 moves ahead, which um is hard, but it's very rewarding as well.
yeah. Um,
I hope that helps.
yeah, it's all of this helps. We didn't get into too much of, I think, like how it was in the early days for you guys to kind of build this out. I mean, a lot of it is documented, so I think just staying on.
Oh,
Yeah, go for it.
I asked 300 people a day if they wanted to join, and 30 of them would say yes. Like
Oh, wow. Yeah,
like I would copy and paste and manually change the names and maybe add a line 300 times a day. It would take me 2 to 3 hours to do this every day, and I would time block and I would target people in our ICP and persona, members of other communities that I was able to somehow find. Um, and 10% of them would say yes. And
mhm.
I'd feed that into those growth loops. And that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So it
And
was,
10% of that's 1,000 a month
yeah,
manually.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Um, Interesting. I guess going back to like the idea of some of these loops that you guys have created or were creating in the process of your fast growth periods, was that any of that intentional, or was that kind of like by happenstance of, you know, to me, it's like almost like you typically are experimenting and trying hundreds of ideas, and then you never really know which one's going to carry forward or stick with people. Was there some kind of like that kind of process internally, or was it just something that organically stemmed out of it?
Great question. So I didn't know growth really starting RevGenius. I now am significantly better at growth. I knew sales. So I was like, how can I grow this as fast as possible? And I was thinking more like, what can I control? I
Hmm.
can control 1,000 members a month.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
that
that
makes sense.
sucks, but I could control that. And then we came across like the adding to the profile and making other people ambassadors. What I found was so like we tried things. What I found was attribution of like people with like referral links and like launching like a morning brew like
Mhm.
campaign. And 4 years ago, morning brew is even cooler than it is today. And so is the hustle. Since they've both been acquired. So that's fucking cool. That's cooler for the founders.
Crazy.
Um, it created a lot of awareness, but direct line attribution, like I think like our whole referral program 1 month might have been 10 to 20% of acquisition,
Hmm.
but like the but it created a lot of awareness.
Yeah,
And so it might have been more than that, but that was like the straight line attribution. But my 1,000 a month was like the core thing.
got it.
And some other communities are doing that. I think I gave that tip to like a few others. I think RevOps Co-op is still doing that, which I'm like, damn, why'd I give that away? It's like the most obvious thing. I was like an SDR myself. I'm like, so when I grew my newsletter, I did the same thing, but via email.
Yeah,
And it worked. I just don't have the patience to
sure.
do that anymore. It's
Yeah,
insane. You need to be insane.
yeah,
And I was.
yeah. Fair enough. So we're rounding up on time, but there's a few things I wanted to talk about in
Yeah.
terms, being plugged into 45,000 plus members now.
Yeah.
Um, all facets of go-to-market, right? From sales, marketing, customer success, RevOps, etc. Um, that's a ton of data, a ton of conversations, right? That's happening through your guys' community.
Yeah.
Um, and sitting on that information, what do you guys see, or what are you seeing, I guess, like the biggest changes, being from, say, still relatively young company in 2020, but maybe like really hitting the steam in like 2022, 2023, and then going to this year, how has go to market evolved? Like, how would you, maybe sum up like what 2022 was, which is maybe like the last year of maybe like crazy growth, and then 2023, which is kind of like this reevaluation period, and how do you see like 2024 rounding up? But yeah, what do you think about go to market in general, and is there any like key takeaways or hard truths that you could bring up from any of those years, time periods?
Yeah. I think the phrase go to market wasn't as prevalent 3 years ago as a
Mm,
first point. And I
interesting.
think 3, 4 years ago, RevOps came about and
Yep.
it's very much organizations were in silos. And I'm not saying that they're not in silos today, but at least the school of thought to unify, sales, marketing, RevOps, CS more is there. And that's like the whole go-to-market idea. I think they said that we went from growth at all costs to like responsible growth, and I agree, but I would even give one more caveat. We went to growth at lowest costs.
Mm,
Like not just efficient growth, like lowest growth. Like how can we maximize EBITDA and like all of this, like which is a great way to think. It's a very lean way to think. I right now I see the market opening up a little bit. I'm seeing it like soften up, thank goodness. I think, what's interesting and what I'm starting to think about, I see what I see, and that's a lot of like group think and people talking and certain things. So like how can I how can I make the future? So a couple things. One, I think tools are very much siloed still.
yeah.
Like, yeah, departments are not siloed, but you have a tool for RevOps. Like AI is going to allow this more, right? Like, why are you using Gong over here, but a different marketing tool here for your podcast? Why are you using Riverside and Gong? Don't they both record and don't they both transcribe? Think about that, right? Like they do.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, but Riverside, yeah, okay, but like they could be the same thing. So I think tools are going to have to de-silo, especially with AI. AI gives you the ability to use all the information at hand from different departments to make better decisions to drive your North Star. Whether that's revenue, acquisition, engagement. If you're a community, it's probably something in there, right? Or value to your customer. Understanding what they're saying in marketing is going to help sales, vice versa, CS, especially with a layer of AI on it. So why
Sure.
not just de-silo? And then also like let's say it's siloed and then you have a tool on top to ingest all of this unstructured information. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to do something about that. Like I'm pretty sure this is an objective state. So I think that's big. I think the growth at lowest cost is has opened up for like the fractional leader.
Mm.
The fractionals have been around for a while, but like they're around a hell of a lot more. The idea of collaborative growth, companies collaborating with individuals, not just partnering with others. And
Mhm.
and this is key with individuals because this is true collaboration for benefit of both. If individuals are both collaborating under a company's employment, it's for the company's good, but there's a forcing function when that individual separates. 1099s is a fractional because you could stack multiple things. Um, in that fractional, we'll use the word fractional, but like let's call it contractor
Sure.
type role. You're seeing creators, influencers, and all sorts of people that could drive demand or hit revenue at different ways. Why does it have to look a certain way? Like we're seeing people dip their toes into influencer marketing and stuff and saying it doesn't work.
Mhm.
That's just because they don't know how to fucking do it, right? Like it will work once the playbooks get out. But the whole idea of individuals being able to run their own solopreneur services businesses in conjunction, I think this is going to help companies remain lean at growth at lowest cost but give that individual like more money in the process. So instead of them having to cut their salary working under here, they could cut their salary and add 4 other clients, right? So they actually double their salary as a whole for the ones that want to take the risk. And this is going to be good multiple sides because it's going to be a really organic way to grow brands and
Mhm.
to grow your revenue as individuals. So those are two big things that I see, and I think that's the evolution of community. And the examples I gave of the growth loops of like HubSpot's people making money, I think money for certain is a top two, probably number one motivator of people at least in the professional world. Um, so like how can you get people in your ecosystem or your community or collaborative growth making money um when you do that they're going to keep showing up in your
Mhm.
ecosystem either because they contractually have to or because they're an affiliate to a dozen places and they're making the most with you and they're going to be loud on social and they're going to drive demand so that and the de-siloing of tools I think it has to happen and it has to start before acquisition because I'm not seeing things roll up super cleanly after acquisition. In fact, I'm seeing the opposite. So if you want the product to actually work, that's
Yeah.
my predictions.
Interesting.
I hope
Um,
that's interesting. I gave you a lot there.
yeah, that all this is, I mean, you're speaking to somebody who loves go-to-market's been doing growth for like 10 years. So all this very
Yeah.
much relevant.
Cool.
Um, I think, yeah, specifically some of these listeners are going to get it too. But last question here, just kind of like,
Yeah.
is centered just around SaaS in general. Like I know you've spent a lot of time in the tech and SaaS in past
Sure.
years, and just curious as to like what you've noticed in this year, if there's any contracting or any of that kind of sort that you're noticing. And then separately from that would be, outside of SaaS potentially contracting, is like, do you think that um, with the AI of everything, I've started to notice that some of these AI, excuse me, sorry, that's separate. sorry. Okay. But sorry, we had like I have like somebody here that's exterminating something.
Oh, it has it been exterminated?
It's like, yeah, they're spraying stuff outside. But anyway, sorry about that.
Okay, all good.
Um, one sec. All right. All right,
By
back
the
to
way,
the
my hair used to be more like yours before I grew it long. I had like a
really?
zero on the sides and
Yeah.
a little bit on top. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm trying to grow out the top. We'll see how long it gets, but it's pretty long down to the back now.
Have you considered growing out the sides too? It's a whole different
I
look. It's a
yeah,
commitment.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if I've
Sure.
got the face for it, but we'll see.
I had no idea what it would look like, but I also knew that if I didn't try, I would never know what it looked like.
Yeah, no, I get it. So I'll give it a go. I might give it a go for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Anyways, off topic, but last question I had was just
Yeah.
like contracting of SaaS in general. If you're noticing that, and then also just like with AI, I know we went through this period of just AI everything, and there's a lot of companies out there that promise a lot, overpromise perhaps on the
Yeah.
AI side of things, and it's not necessarily delivering. I've heard a lot of just kind of complaints
Yep.
from the market around that. Any thoughts on that topic? And then
Yeah.
do you think it's going to clear up like very quickly here, or is it something that's going to be like another year or so for us to really kind of like figure it out? I know AI is a different beast because it's
Yeah.
so
So
fast, but like,
two parts, SaaS contracting, and I think you saw like OpenView like and some other VCs like it's just not working out. So
yeah,
like if there's less money in, it will contract because
yeah,
I'm not sure how many of these people know how to bootstrap
yeah,
still, even though we're saying that, to be honest.
true,
I think some of the leading indicators for contraction like have happened within the last 6 to 12 months. So we'll see how that happens. AI, it seems like there's still money coming in. And in regards to AI not working in the beginning, of course, AI is not going to work in the beginning. I was in predictive analytics 10 years ago. It takes time to come up. Will it ever work? Dude, no startups work in the beginning.
yeah,
Like I'll just take like is AI of does that shock me? No, not at all. I do think what's cool about what's happening at AI now, it feels like there's like a smarter group of AI engineers coming in versus just like GPT and a wrapper, which felt like V1-ish.
yeah,
So it feels like this is a little more unique than like, hey, GPT plus a point of view plus a strong go to market that cut it a little bit. It cut it to Series A at least for some companies on the top of my mind. But I think now you're having like real data folks come in.
yeah,
Um, but it's still based on the strength of the founder. If you have a shitty or mediocre founder with a mediocre idea that can't execute, yeah, you're going to see a lot of talk and not a lot of that just goes with early stage founders, period.
yeah. Fair enough. That's a true point. Um,
I mean, I've been
answer the
around,
question
I've
pretty
seen
quickly.
it, and I'm like,
Yeah,
great question, but I've seen
yeah,
it not in AI. So
yeah. It's kind of the growing pains of something new.
are they
Um,
gonna figure it out or not? And do they have the
yeah,
team? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. On that note, thank you so much for taking the time and making the
Dude,
time today. It was great. A lot of great insights.
this was engaging, man. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, of course, man. It was super helpful, just personally, but also I think, the listeners are gonna really benefit. So